Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Shōgun, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I had a lot of misconceptions going into the show, like what it really was about. I was really unclear. The trailers kind of showed like this historical kind of epic of sorts, but I didn't really know what the nitty gritty of the show was, because I was under the impression that kind of our pseudo lead character, Lord Toranaga, I thought that he had already become Shogun and it was about keeping his power. We find out it turns out that the Taiko, the previous kind of major lord, had died like a year ago, and the five regents of the territory basically had their own lands and territories that they represent, and Toranaga is one of those, but the other regents have joined forces. There's one in particular who's kind of the head honcho. Was it Ishido? He's kind of got the other regents turned against Toranaga, saying like, hey, you've been vying for power and you've been kind of amassing stuff. You ended up like taking the heir to the throne because the heir is too young to take over his father's position, his father being the previous Taiko. It's like he's too young to take that throne, and so they're kind of saying that Toranaga kidnapped the heir's mom, to kind of protect himself, because it's like, here you are in Osaka, we won't do anything to you, but he's like, no, she's no more a hostage back in my region than I am here. It's like a lot of like little chess pieces on the board moving, and then one of the guys ended up drawing his blade, causing a whole commotion, and he wanted to commit seppuku in the moment, but he wasn't allowed it. So it turns out, because he's like, oh, I will end my like family lineage here. I thought it was like, okay, because my family lineage will end with me. Turns out, as we see later on, it goes even, because I'm aware of seppuku. I don't know all there is to it, but I've watched enough stuff where seppuku has come up, so I'm familiar with the whole thing of like, right, you basically take your sword and you like disembowel yourself. It's supposed to restore honor for whatever failings you may have, or failings or embarrassments you may have displayed, and it's just supposed to bring honor back to your family. So it's all about you. But I'm wondering, I've never heard of this particular situation where instead of that guy being punished, his child had, basically it's like your bloodline has to end with you, meaning they have a child. Him and his wife, Lady Fuji, have to basically kill their child, because it's like that's the only way you're going to restore some form of honor, is by basically ending your own bloodline. That's the only way. It's like, it is that sad thing. I'm like, I'd never really heard that before. Like, I guess it's an extension of the seppuku, or it's probably just a separate thing that kind of is in the same vein as a seppuku. But yeah, we meet Mariko, who is there to because Fuji was about to kill herself, because it's like, no, you can't ask me to just like kill my baby and let my baby die and then just for me to stay behind, because I will lose my purpose in life. Like, how can I keep going in life without a purpose? And Mariko is like, I understand. And we get more context to that at the end of the episode. Her father died like 14 years ago, and we don't know the real correlation to it, but the fact is that she was in the same position as Fuji. She wanted to die with her father, but she was given orders to, you have to live. It's like, I guess it's almost like you have to carry on that shame. I think that's the point of it. It's like, no. They have to suffer the ramifications. You have to live so that you are a constant reminder of your shame. That's how you repent. Like, they pay the price, but you live with that price. And I think that's supposed to be... once again, that's my limited understanding on it. But that sucks, because Mariko was trying to because the husband was telling her, hey, I'm your husband, you have to listen to me. She's like, at least give her the decency. This actually is all your fault. You're not the one, you're up here giving her orders. She's the one that has to basically march her child to death. This is because of your actions. And even they were going to try and take the baby, but it's like, Mariko was like, no. Let her be the last hands that touch her baby, that, take her baby all the way. And it's just like, that's horrendous. That sucks, dude. Because all the while this is happening, Toranaga is stuck back in Osaka because he's being held by the other regents, and it's this game of, okay, you have 7 days to return the heir's mother, and once you do, we as the council, the 4 other regents, will determine your fate. But like, Toranaga kind of knows what's what. It's like, the moment we hand over the heir's mom, they're going to basically Ishido's going to basically like force the council to vote to kill me. So it's just a bid for power, because Ishido is, they even talk about it later on, Ishido's basically, the moment he gets rid of Toranaga, I guess he's like the biggest competition. So for whatever reason, he was able to convince the other regents to join his side. But the moment they've served their purposes, he'll kill every single one of them and amass all the power on his own. Because he actually sent one of his generals, Hiromatsu, which I love that conversation, being like, oh, like, I was just wondering, what was he was basically saying, like, oh, like, do you basically regret choosing my side instead of being with the regents? And Hiromatsu was like, yeah, I've thought about it. I've wondered about it a little bit. But it's kind of like, right, I'm by your side through and through, my lord. You have my loyalty. The fact that he was smiling with it makes me go, like, it was him joking. But it's like, it seemed like Toranaga seems, I mean, I'm sure every lord has their own respect amongst people, but I think a lot of people really respect Toranaga because he's from like a specific bloodline family, the Minowaras. I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things, but I think that's also kind of supposed to be the point, that we are coming in the middle of something we don't fully understand, especially like Blackthorn is kind of the insert character, someone from the outside who knows nothing, kind of coming in and learning things, which that was a whole thing in itself, where apparently there were 5 ships, over 500 men, and now there are barely one ship with, like, at the time 13, but then the captain killed himself because he was just like, and I feel like that was supposed to be the parallel too of like where the show began with that opening aboard that ship to where the episode ends, because for Blackthorn, he thinks it's stupid to try and, like, it's like, why after everything are you going to give up? He was like, he like had pulled up like sand, so it's like, right, the land of Japan, as he calls it, like the Japans. I guess they don't realize Japan's just like one country, but they say like I think that's so interesting, but like he like pluralizes it as like, oh, it's the Japans instead of just Japan. I think that's so interesting. Maybe it's just kind of like supposed to be like an outside perspective of Japan being, I mean, maybe back then Japan was a bigger territory than what it is. I mean, because Japan's like, I mean, like, obviously there's a lot to it, but it's a fairly small landmass in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I'm not well versed in geology, but I'm pretty sure, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure like Japan's like a lot smaller than you think it is. When it comes to like, it's a pretty small country in the grand scheme of things, but you know, maybe there's a lot more Japanese territory because this is like 1600, so maybe there was just a lot more Japanese territory in that regard. But like I said, I think that's just supposed to be like the European ignorance of not really, because Japan is so elusive. The only people who have any correlation and connection to Japan is Portugal, because they've sent people specifically like the Catholic Portugals, because that's what this ends up being. It's like Catholic Portugals versus European Protestants. The back and forth about, because one group, the Portuguese are the ones that actually have trade with Japan, and they've kept that trade very like hush hush. I think it's interesting too, like that conversation that comes up later on in the episode where it's like, Blackthorn's like, oh, they believe Portugal's the only flag that waves in Europe. Makes a lot of sense, because it's like, this is supposed to be your thing, so you don't even want them to know there's even anyone else. It's like, no, back in Europe, yeah, it's only Portugal. No one else. There's not other countries and regions and sections. Like, it's just only us, you know? So that's an interesting element. But it also kind of makes sense from like a... It's interesting because it's like the clashing of like religions too, because it's like, it seems like religion's going to play a more prominent element in this than I thought. I mean, this is an era where religion like dictates so much, so it makes sense. Like, So obviously it's going to be this interesting through line throughout the entire series, interestingly enough. Anyway, circling back, like I said, the captain of the ship ended up killing himself because he wanted to be able to go out on his own. It's like, at my age, you basically get to dictate how you want to go out. You get to decide where the line's drawn. But for Blackthorn, it's like, no. We've come too far. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to see this mission through. Like, taking yourself out like that is the coward's way out. Once again, it's just that interesting perspective because that's his viewpoint, whereas like in Japan, killing yourself, once again, seppuku, is supposed to be an honorable way to take your way out. It's the only way to get your honor back once you've done something that's honorable. So it is that interesting parallel of like Blackthorn having to see that from a certain perspective. So what he once called cowardly, he now has to see from a different view, different lens. But either way, him and the others were captured. I love that there's a lord, I'm probably going to butcher it, Yabushige, who basically he comes to his nephew's territory because his brother died maybe a year ago, and his sister-in-law was kind of like, hey, this is an opportunity for you to kind of like get in some good graces with him, and he's the one kind of dictating a lot of this stuff because obviously it's a language barrier between Blackthorn and his crew and everyone in Japan. They don't speak the same language. They don't speak Japanese. They don't understand Blackthorn and his people, and it's this miscommunication. They even have they do have a translator there who is translating, being like, yo, be good. But obviously Blackthorn's like, no, these godless heathens. And it's so interesting because everyone in Japan looks at these people as barbarians, and then it's like he uses the word savage to describe them. I mean, there was even one point, I think it was the nephew, Yabushige's nephew, who ended up beheading that guy, because that guy, I think he was like bowing, and because he's kind of like, whoa, should we really be doing this? And I guess it's just, getting his head lopped off. Like, it was just like instant. He was just doing the crossing, his doing the the religious thing of you do the cross on your head off, clean off. And he was brought before Yabushige, and there's a priest that was brought about, and so it's like he's saying like, oh, this guy's a pirate, he's a pirate, this and that, like he needs to die, all he's going to do is bring death to Japan and Portugal, so it's like you need to kill him. And Blackthorn's trying to make a point of like, oh, I'm not with this heathen, this godless, dickless heathen, and just kind of throws the cross on the ground and he stomps on it. It's like, we are not the same. And it's like Yabushige decided like, no, we'll keep him alive, and obviously this priest, you want your blood, let's make it someone else in his crew. And Yabushige is a twisted mother effer because he wanted to kill one of the crew, bound the dude up and put him in a large boiling hot cauldron, boiled him alive. I mean, we see it later on, the guy's skin is blistered and melting off. You're just like, Jesus Christ. It's like he wanted to pick such a, because he even said like, oh, we have a very special way of handling things. And then like one of Yabushige's people was talking to that Kurasan Kiku and was like, yeah, he kind of enjoys that moment of death for people. And the guy that was being killed, boiled, finally, like, he was in it for hours because it went from like midday to nighttime, and he was just screaming in agony. It wasn't a quick death. He was being boiled alive, and it took a while. He was screaming for hours until he killed himself. He bashed his own head. You can see him bashing his head against the cauldron to kill himself. It's like, Jesus, guy, like, I wish you would have probably thought of that sooner, because it's just like, jeez. And then Yabushige's just kind of like, oh, there was kind of nothing from his death. Like, it kind of, I don't know what, like, he gets something from it, I guess, learning about death like that. The closer you can kind of get to experiencing death, I guess, the more you understand it, or maybe what's on the other side. He wanted to infer something from the death, but I'm not sure what he was trying to get from it, what he thinks he's going to get from death, regardless of it all. Either way, Yabushige had his own plans in place, because he knew, like, oh, like, because they are under Toranaga. He's their he's the lord of their region, and he's like, we're not gonna, he tells his nephew, like, don't worry about it, we're not gonna tell Toranaga. He decided to hand himself over in Osaka. He's gonna face death. Obviously Ishido's gonna be the one running things, so why don't we bet, or like, you know, pick the winning horse in this situation. But just as he speaks those words, Hiromatsu shows up and is like, hey, that boat, I heard about the barbarian and everything, because Torunaga's not supposed to know about it at all, because Yabushige made sure to keep that hush-hush. But it's like, yeah, him and his nephew were just over here plotting, and that's immediately removed. And I love Yabushige's like, no, this is kind of my territory, so I should be able to dictate stuff. And Hiromatsu's like, oh, I'm sorry, for a second I thought you were loyal to your lord. And Yabushige like pauses. It's like, yeah, he knows what time it is. He's like, of course I am. Of course I'm loyal to my lord. Anything he wants. It's like, cool. So we're going to confiscate everything and give it to Toranaga. So it's like, not Toranaga. So I'm like, man, once again, as you were literally putting it out there, those words came back to bite you in the ass. Because we find out the person that's the insider that let Toranaga know, it's the guy that was translating for a bit for Blackthorn. That guy is their insider, which they do now know, like, right, we have someone on, there's a spy reporting back to Toranaga, which also proves to Toranaga, like, oh, I know I can't trust you. I'm going to keep you in line. I'm going to make sure you stay in line. I probably can use you and need you, but I'm going to be willing to remove you from the equation if I need to. But for now, I'm going to leave you be, but I know to keep an eye on your treacherous ass. You know what, I actually completely forgot to talk about, like, the fact is, like, Toranaga, the actor Hiroyuki Sanada, he's one of those actors where you're like, man, I've seen him in so many things. It's hard to really pinpoint just one thing, because he's just one of those great actors where you're like, oh, you see him in so many things, you're like, oh, it's that dude. He's just one of those actors, and it's just like, this might be one of the few things I've seen him be like one of the main leads in, which isn't to say he hasn't done it before, but I'm like, most things I've seen him in, it's never been like a major role. Like, he might play like a main character, but usually it's like, I mean, I guess this could be considered maybe an ensemble cast. I don't know. I still look at him as kind of like the lead character of the show. And he has the most prominence amongst the main cast, amongst the ensemble cast to some extent. So, oh, another recognizable person for me was Rodriguez. Like, he is played by Nestor Carbonell. I hope I'm not butchering his name. He's one of those actors too, because I was looking at Rodriguez, I was like, is that who I think it is? And it totally is. Like, the thing I'm probably best known for, a lot of people probably be best known for, is Lost. But he's one of those actors where, like, you've definitely seen him pop up and stuff, but, like, Lost is probably the thing that immediately comes to mind. It's been a while since I saw Lost, so I don't even remember his character's name, but yeah, that was interesting. So he's there to kind of be this pseudo-helper to Blackthorn, which I thought was interesting. I was like, hey, he's kind of acting as a little bit of a translator and kind of tells him what's happening, and it's like, oh, the guy that got you Hiromatsu is serving some other person. And it's like, wait, there's someone out there more powerful than those guys? It's like, oh, dude, those fanatics, a million of those fanatics would do anything to wipe Gana's ass. Kind of showcasing, like, oh, you thought you were dealing with powerful people. He thought, once again, he's an outsider who knows nothing about this, because he wants to get his men, but it's like, well, nah, that's not how this goes. You're going to go get sent to Osaka so that you could sit down and talk to Toragana, because he's taken an interest in you. Which he's going to have Mariko be the translator, because it's like, for what she did with Fuji, but also, like, it's like your father was kind of like someone insightful that I admired and looked up to. And it turns out that he's like, I can give you and restore your purpose, because her purpose, once again, was stripped away from her, just like Fuji. It's like, right, you kind of have to live. And so she's going to act as the translator for what he's about to, because the moves he's about to make, because it's like she and so many others know, like, hey, the moment Ishido gets a chance, the council is going to vote to remove you from that and also kill you. And Mariko's like, yeah, the rest of us will follow you in death, my lord, when it comes to that. So he's making moves, and he thinks that for whatever reason he believes, and maybe it's because he knows that they showed up with all that artillery. Because we did see that it did seem that they had guns That's why I was almost like, oh, so it's not fully a Blue Eye, because I kind of assumed like, because I want to say like, didn't Blue Eye Samurai, because I don't remember, I want to say it takes place like the mid to late 1500s. So I guess already the Western influence is already kind of creeped in. I mean, obviously they've already had like trade relations with Portugal and stuff like that. But yeah, they do have guns. They have like basically almost like very old school, like almost like musket type of guns. But they don't have the full artillery that other countries, specifically in this case Europe, would have access to, because that ship had like a whole bunch of firepower, cannonballs, bombs, and like cannons themselves, all of which were confiscated. So, and that's kind of plays into the whole thing where Blackthorn is like, no, we were lost, we're just merchants. It's like, no, you're not just merchants. You know, Rodriguez wasn't buying that BS. He's like, yeah, sure, you can keep peddling that lie if you want to, but we're not. It smells a little iffy. But anyway, Tora Naga plans on utilizing. He's like, referencing Mariko. He's like, Mariko himself as well as Blackthorn. It's like there could be something here. Like there may be fate and destiny that brought us together, and he may be able to change the tide for me when it comes to shifting things in my favor. Because there was this whole conversation he had with the lady that kind of, I guess she might be one of the tutors to the heir, that she was like, right, your name isn't what they fear, it's your bloodline as a Minowara that they kind of fear. And it's like, oh, you could be a shogun. But he's like, I don't want to. That's a title, a very brutal title. Basically a position and title that came with brutality, and he's like, it's from a bygone era. He has no interest in being a shogun. But the question is he playing that front just to seem, oh, like I have no interest in that, when in actuality he does? Because it's larger conversation about like every man has three hearts: the one in his mouth to the world, the one in his chest that he keeps close to, like, you know, he lets his friends see, and then there's the heart buried deep inside that you never let anyone see. So it almost feels like that might be in correlation with Toragana. So I'm wondering, like, he does have his machinations. He does have secret plans as he's like secretly learning stuff about the ship and Blackthorn and stuff. So it makes me feel like he might not be the honorable good person we think he is, because the person that was talking to him was like, right, it's because you're a good person, but being a good person might not be necessary right now. Because that could be a slippery slope. Maybe in actuality, he is a good person. He is a good lord. He's just being put in a very unfavorable position. He has to make the most of it. So it could be that. And it might be a thing of he's a good man that goes bad just for the sake of survival, but going bad and breaking bad in a sense ends up leading him down a path he can never come back from. Or, as I was mentioning beforehand, maybe he's always been a bad person, just feigning to be good, and he's trying to, like, sweet talk his way into these positions and trying to win over people's favor by pretending to be good when he's got all these machinations, like, set in motion. Either way, while they were in the process of, like, transporting stuff to making their way to Osaka, they hit, like, a storm or whatever, and it's actually Blackthorn who kind of helps them find their way through. He actually threw one of the rowing oars out there to sea because Rodriguez had gotten thrown out there, trying to help his chance of survival. But also, you know, some people are falling overboard, and you have Blackthorn, because these people might not be people he knows, but he still wants, I guess, prove himself in favorable position to everybody. Be like, oh, look, I'm helping. But also, it's like, these people on board, he has people's lives in his hands, so I'm here, I want to be able to do something. It's the good, God would smile upon me for doing such good work to this. Once again, especially because from his perspective, these people are quote-unquote savages. So it's like, oh, God will smile even more upon me for the good work I'm doing. Maybe that's a justification, or maybe it's just a good thing of, nah, these people on the ship, we're in this together. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, like, us being bound together on this ship means our lives are in each other's hands, type of thing. So Turns out, I was kind of bummed for a second. I was like, "Oh, is Rodriguez dead?" I was like, "Oh, come on, I really like him. I like his personality." I was like, "No, he's alive." But because they ultimately end up finding him, but he's down below a cliff, and so Blackthorn wants to go get him, but it's like, no, they don't. He's too valuable to let himself be put in that danger. So he's like, "Oh, you don't want to look like a punk in front of your men." So he hands the rope to Yabushige, and it's like, well, he has to go. And one of his men is like, "No, let me go." And he's like, "No, this barbarian is testing me." So he goes down. Rope snaps way part through, and I just love Blackthorn being like, "Oh man, so sorry about your shithead lord," or something like that. He said bad-mouthed him in some way. But yeah, it turns out Rodriguez is still alive, and he positions Rodriguez to be in a better position of like, nah, he's okay, but he gets swept up by the water, and in the process, he was going to kill himself, and that whole thing kind of struck Blackthorn. It's like, wait, in that moment, without hesitation, he drew his blade and did it. Once again, it's just the parallels of making him realize, like, right, he was willing to do that, and to the point that when they do pull him up before he could seppuku himself, they end up pulling him up, and Blackthorn bows to him because it makes him go like, he saw respect in that, even though he besmirched that early on in the season. I mean, not early on in the season, just it's the entire episode early on in the season, you idiot. At the beginning of the episode, like I said, to have that full 180 on that whole situation, I think is so interesting. And he has this conversation with Rodriguez about that very thing. And for him, it's like, oh, I'm not going to die in this godless land. He was besmirching Japan because he's like, oh, like he's like this. I forgot what the exact word. I mean, obviously, he kept using godless a lot, but it was like, what was it like? I mean, that might have been more so in reference. It might not even been in reference to Japan. That might have been just more so. I think the godless stuff was mostly aimed at Portugal and the Spaniards in general. He was saying something about this land not being like, he just kind of, he looked at it as like this in his mind, he looked at Japan as like some backwater place that was nothing. But it's like, oh, you really think so? Go out there and see for yourself. And it's like, he sees Osaka. It's like, oh, this is a place that you're like looking down upon. And now think about the man who can run a place like this. It's like, he had his vision in his mind of what I think the village he saw is what he thought all of Japan looked like and was. And now he sees like, yo, this is a great example of the culmination of power that is Japan. And thinking about the fact is a person, what kind of power they have to reign over something. So that the beauty to that is like the structures and building. And it's like, it's more of a society than he thought it was. Once again, because he kept using the word savages because he didn't think much of them. And so he gets brought before Toranaga, and there was that line from Rodriguez like, oh, maybe when this is all said and done, you will find out why you were brought to this land and what your purpose is. And that's where the episode ends. So obviously there is a second episode out. 2 episodes were dropped, I'm assuming week to week going forward. But I'm excited to continue this to see where all of this ends up taking us, what role Blackthorn will hold in all of this. Based on the stuff of the trailer, I've seen, like, especially him and Mariko, like, she has her role to play in all of this, and where this all takes us as everyone's making moves, and will it work out for them in the long run? It's going to be interesting to see. I was curious to see how many episodes it is, but it seems like this is going to be a grand total of 10 episodes from what I've seen. Anyway, I'm very, very excited to continue seeing where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.